during the presentations, please pop them in the chat, as one of the team is keeping a close eye on that, and we'll be taking as many questions as possible at the end of the session. If we can't get around to all of them, if we can't answer all the questions and queries that you've put forward to us, we will respond to you via email after the event, so you will get an answer. The event does close at 12, and at that point we will stop recording, but the Staffordshire Business Environment Network team, or SBEN as I call them, will stay online for a further 15 minutes. So you can have a more informal chat with one of the team to answer your queries, which I hope will be beneficial for some of you. To help SBEN gather intelligence on how businesses are feeling about their environmental performance, they will be launching 4 30-second snap polls. They'll launch in the next hour, and we'd really like your participation in those, just to get most of them a yes, no, but it'll give us a really good clue about how you're feeling, where you are with your environmental performance. So we would really appreciate that. All very whizzy, the technology, I have no idea how it works, but you will be able to see how other people are answering, I believe, as well. So very, very exciting. Next slide, please. I hope that you can all see the agenda there. I certainly can. It has popped up for me. So very shortly, Dewey Batir will be introducing the carbon tracker to you, and Faith Johnson from EQM will be talking about the methodology as well, which I'm sure will be really interesting to all of you. At around 11:25, Diane Headwell from the climate change team is going to talk more about Staffordshire County Council's climate change strategy, which I think will be, really helpful and useful for some of you too. At 11:35, Julie will come back and start talking to you about feedback from some of the businesses who've trialled and helped with the carbon tracker tool for us. So I'm sure you'll be really interested in hearing what their thoughts are so far. Hopefully we won't run over too much, and then at 11:45 we'll have time for questions. We'll pick some out of the chat and answer those questions to the team, so hopefully they'll be able to answer them for you live. If there's any further questions, then put your hand up at the end there and we'll answer them for you. So we'll do as best we can to get as many in that 15 minutes, but we will answer everybody who puts something in the chat, as I said before. So let's get on with it. That's plenty from me. Let's get on with the actual business of the day. So Dewey and Faith, it's your turn to speak.
Thanks, Nicola, along with the whole SBEN team. Really glad to see you all, and thanks, Nicola, for the welcome for the carbon tracker. Starting with the carbon tracker itself, let's go through with what is a carbon footprint, as you already know, most of you. I've taken this from the greenhouse gas protocol, the GHG protocol, which defines the carbon footprint as the total set of the greenhouse gas emissions or the GHG emissions which are caused directly or indirectly by an individual, event, organization or product, and is always expressed as tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. I really like this image. Why? Because essentially carbon footprint really forms the basis of all our decisions to make some tangible actions towards either it is a reduction in energy consumption, improvisation, environmental policy, directly affecting or indirectly affecting the global warming, and various other aspects towards this. You can see from the image below. We'll go through with it more in the future slides, in the further slides. Chris, my colleague at SBEN, if we can have the launch of the first poll, and if I can request all the delegates to have a go within 30 seconds, please.
Should be seeing it now.
Yeah, I can't see anything on the screen because I'm just sharing the screen. So hopefully
I can see it's fine.
Brilliant, Christina. Do we have it then?
The response is showing, Dewey, on the screen.
Brilliant, Christina. Do you want to just iterate it on my behalf and so everybody knows? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. We have a big majority of 71% say no. Have you measured your business carbon footprint, against 29 who have said yes, 29%.
So that's really great. Thanks, Christina. It looks like we have the right audience for the carbon tracker today, and we have the audience who already have a knowledge of carbon footprint. So that could be a really great discussion at the end. Please save your questions, and we look forward to your feedback at the very end. Right, let's go with the next slide. So what does a tons of carbon dioxide equivalent really mean? So it's the basic unit of measurement where the various 6 greenhouse gases, as you can see from the slide itself, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, hydrofluorocarbons, perfluorocarbons, and sulfur hexafluoride. They've been measured like for like, relatively equivalent to a ton of a carbon and 1 unit of a carbon dioxide. So it's really the basic unit of measurement where we measure the carbon dioxide emissions, amalgamation of all of these gases really. Impactful wise, you can see on the very left hand side of the corner of the slide, a metric ton of a carbon equivalent will be will have an impact of an average weight of a female giraffe. So you can see how impactful it is, and most of you may already know about it, that it is also measured in terms of a global warming potential, which is actually multiplying all of these gases with their 100 years of their emissions over a timeline of a period. Yeah. So we're really glad to present to you a fantastic tool, a carbon tracker, in terms of supporting the businesses within Staffordshire region to help them identify their carbon organizational carbon emissions. So carbon tracker is SBEN's online carbon footprint reporting tool that will enable all the Staffordshire organizations to measure carbon emissions with the waste for their from their energy use, fuel, travel, water consumption, and energy generation. It's been the project has been funded by Staffordshire County Council, and thankful to the funders. We already have Diane Ugal with us presenting some of the views from the Staffordshire County Council later with all of you. And we have a fantastic team of developers through Faith Johnson and the team at the Environmental Quality Mark CIC, who have helped us develop the carbon tracker. And it's been just 3 months. We've been really user testing and trialing the carbon tracker itself. In terms of the eligibility, the tool is available free to any business registered within the Staffordshire County Council, and to access the tool, you need to be a member of Staffordshire Business Environment Network. So the membership is totally free, also funded, fully funded for the rest of the year. So you just need to sign it up as an SBEN member, and you will get access to the carbon tracker. Why use carbon trackers? So the government, UK government has already set themselves in April 2021 this year to reduce their country's emission 78% and achieve a decarbonization goal net zero by 2035. So that's very aggressive and very a very big target. And I think most of us as an organization and businesses are working towards it to help achieve government get that to that target. So yes, carbon tracker will be really helpful to the businesses to identify, measure, monitor, and mitigate the areas of the highest emissions within your businesses. It really helps through the identification of carbon emissions to understand how will you be able to reduce the carbon emissions, and that will help you to achieve cost reduction and higher profitability and productivity. The carbon tracker, which you will be seeing in next few slides later, will also help you to set yourself robust targets to achieve decarbonization or net zero. It's not just an year process, it will have to be a reiterative, a progressive year on year, where you can access the carbon tracker and record your carbon emissions and use and compare those emissions as you progress year on year, which will help you to make tangible decisions towards a reduction. It will also help you to commit yourself once you've identified your emissions and make a pledge through the base SME Climate Hub pledge we've been using. Obviously, Carbon Tracker will help you to not only demonstrate your leadership, but also strengthen you, give you confidence as an organization that yes, you are making tangible efforts towards carbon reduction, and you are working towards gaining that credit, which we call green credentials. Having said that, the Carbon Tracker is one of the tools which we are offering to the local businesses. But yes, once you've identified the carbon emissions, obviously the next plan is how to reduce it. So we have various programs, funded programs, our energy efficiency program, low carbon business evolution, funds are available, funding support is available. You can speak to us and we can then help you to reduce those emissions through a rightful measure. And we have our fantastic network of members within SBEN network who can offer you further help to develop your carbon reduction strategies and help you prioritize your actions towards environmental sustainability. Faith is already there, I believe. Faith.
Yes, hello.
Hi, Faith. Welcome to the launch event, and I am now handing slide to Faith, who will now behind the carbon tracker. There you go, Faith.
Hello, everyone. So the carbon tracker was designed specifically to be simple and require absolutely no prior knowledge of greenhouse gas company reporting. But also on the flip side of that, it's designed to be robust. So it's designed to use the same figures and metrics as official, top-notch government or big corporate greenhouse gas company reporting. So it follows the UK government environmental reporting guidelines, at least the key principles of that. And it converts the data that you put into the tool into carbon emissions expressed as tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. And it does this by multiplying your data by the UK government carbon conversion factors, which are updated each year and published. So there are official figures for a kilowatt hour of electricity and a kilowatt hour of gas and a certain amount of water used and so on. And they're the figures it uses, and each year has separate figures that are the official government figures for that year. There's some pretty abstract and complicated concepts associated with carbon reporting, which again, the carbon tracker has specifically chosen not to introduce to you, because you know, if you're a busy business owner and have got 20 minutes to chuck your details that you've compiled into this carbon tracker and then you've got to move on to a meeting with a client, you shouldn't have to get your head around abstract definitions and concepts that, you know, the head of environment at BP might already know. So we've done something behind the scenes to make the reporting more robust, but keep it simpler on the face of things for you. Now, you don't have to listen to this bit if it's a techie bit and it's going to confuse you, but for those of you who already know about scope emission factors, the Greenhouse Gas Protocol defines different scopes of emissions. Scope 1 are things you burn yourself, like gas on site. Scope 2 are things that someone else burns on your behalf, like electricity, like the power station that generates the electricity. You know how much you use. They burn it on your behalf at the power station. And scope 3 are things that are more intangible and more arm's length. So that might be things in your supply chain or down your end of product life chain. So what we've done is consolidate the government carbon factors, adding these together so you don't report them separately. So when you put your electricity in, all of the different carbon scopes are added together in the carbon factor that produces the results. Now, you don't really need to know that. All you need to understand from that is that the figures that the carbon tracker spits out are robust and include scopes 1, 2, and 3 for all the various elements you put your data in for. So that's a little bit of techie speak. As they say on the L'Oreal adverts, that's the science bit. Next slide, please. So what data do you need? Well, you need your electricity consumption for the year you choose to report on in kilowatt hours, and you get that from your bill. You need your gas consumption in total kilowatt hours for the annual cycle that you choose to report on, and again, you get that from your bill. Any other fuels that you use on site, oil, diesel, petrol, gas oil, LPG, you would need from your invoices the amount of consumption that you've used that year. If you have biomass, wood pellets, chip, logs, again, how much in kilograms you've used in your given annual period for your footprint. And your water supply information, the total amount of water that you've used and also discharged in cubic meters. Your own fleet company travel, you have a choice as to what kind of data you bring to this part of the carbon tracker. You can put in extremely simple information, say 2 cars and 1 van. If you don't know whether they're diesel or petrol, you can put very generic information in. Obviously, that will spit out less accurate results, but if you've only got a short amount of time to address this, you can put generic information in. Equally, on the other end of the spectrum, you can put in number plate information, and it will draw down from, again, a government website, the exact emissions per kilometre of that vehicle registration. And there's also anything in between, really. You can group, you can consolidate your total mileage for all of your vehicles, or the diesel vehicles or the petrol vehicles. Just depends how accurate you want to be and how much time you want to spend. So you've got options within the fleet travel section. There's also an employee grey fleet travel. So that is non-owned vehicles, but journeys that are done on behalf of the company by employees in their own vehicles or in public transport. And then also you can input any electricity that you've generated on site and exported to the grid. And that's a net figure that would be subtracted from your total. At the moment, waste is not included in the tool. We intend to do that as a further development. Next slide, please. So what do you get once you've put all the information in? You get some very clear, attractive looking on-screen results, which allow you to compare and report your carbon emissions year on year. You get a downloadable report, which has some recommendations, as to generic recommendations as to how you can reduce your carbon emissions across each area. There are also some quite useful carbon intensity ratios, which you can use for benchmarking. So, for example, carbon emissions per employee, carbon emissions per square footage of your property, carbon emissions per unit of turnover. And this allows different sectors to compare against each other and how they're doing in terms of reducing their carbon emissions. There's also, once your results are in there, an interactive net zero tool, which shows you a graph of where you are now and where you would need to get to net zero, and you can choose what date you might wish to achieve net zero with a date inputter, or there's a little slidey scale where you can decide what percentage reduction year on year you might think is sensible for your business, and it shows you then when you might hit net zero. And then once you've done that, it invites you to pledge to net zero. And that's a link off to the SME Climate Hub page, where your pledge could go on the United Nations pledge wall alongside other UK businesses and other businesses across the world who are pledging to achieve net zero by your chosen date. Thank you.
Thanks, Faith. Thank you so much for taking through with us the basic methodology and the design behind the carbon tracker itself. Chris, may I please request you to launch the second poll question, please, for the delegates, and all of you will have 30 seconds for your responses.
Should be there now.
Thanks, Chris. Great, it is appearing. Christina, can you
Yeah,
help me with
I
it?
can. Again, we have a significantly more response in terms of no. So that's 66%, as opposed to about half of that. So 2/3 effectively saying no, 1/3 saying yes.
Towards the question, if you want to just
That is to the question, have you made a net zero pledge?
that's brilliant. So it looks like, you know, the tool will help the delegates and the organizations, you know, to maybe make a decision, you know, whether they'll be committing themselves for the carbon reduction, and then, you know, perhaps making a pledge. So that's again another positive for all the delegates. Brilliant. Let's go with the next slide. So from here on, I will take you further on a journey, on a very quick journey to show you the glimpse of the carbon tracker itself. How does it looks like? And as Faith explained, how does it actually works in action? So this is the first starting page. Once you've signed up for the free SBEN membership and you are in a Staffordshire business, we will be giving you the link, and that's the business registration page where you can see you can register yourself as a business. After registering yourself as a business, the first step is towards entering your basic details, the background of the business itself, which will be around information where the company is based, but also about number of employees, turnover, revenue, and physical size. So as it was explained by Faith, that some of the outcomes will also help you to identify your carbon intensity ratios, which are based upon this basic business details, which are really required for all the businesses entering the information in Carbon Tracker. Yes, you as a business, you will have to identify and decide on the baseline reporting period for your carbon emissions. So that should be essentially a 12 months period. It could be a financial year as a business or a calendar year, whichever you choose to. And this is the one-off you know, template to help you calculate the carbon emissions, but you can then again set yourself another periods, for example 2019 to 2020, and then you can do another form for 2020 to 2021. Having said that, we have considered our carbon tracker using the carbon conversions from 2019 itself, so you can do a pre-COVID scenario for your organizations, and then you can run through 2020, 2021 and past COVID scenarios, which would be really ideal for as a business to understand how it has impacted over the years. Starting with the first audit itself, or first data input. So excuse me, you will be asked to put yourself information around energy consumption. So that could be electricity, gas, fuel oil, diesel, red diesel, petrol, biomass, LPG, and coal. We haven't went through with the details here, but yes, once you have the access to the carbon tracker, you can understand, as it was explained in the data required, the kilowatt hours through your meters, or the liter consumption of the oil appropriately wherever it is being used. One thing to mention, below this screen in the actual carbon tracker, there is costs element also, which you need to include in your energy data, which will be really helpful for the outcome to appear in the reports. Taking to the transport section, as explained by Faith earlier, it not only includes the business vehicles, but also your employee vehicles. So it gives you information around your car usage, public transport, train and buses, flights, taxis, and it will also ask you how much you are spending on your transport in this particular section. You will have opportunity to have two options chosen. One will be the detailed information of each of your vehicles, vehicle by vehicle, or else you can choose an option that you have aggregated average data, that you have around 100 fleet of cars, you know. So for example, as a taxi company, you would like to include as an average size of a car, petrol car, and you want to choose a summative or summary kind of an option. So there will be two options for you to choose in the transport section itself. Third is the water audit. There are two, again, scenarios here. So you will be able to identify your water footprint through supply and also through discharge, which is straightforward here. A meter cube is the unit. And then at the very end, it will be your electricity generated and exported to the grid, which you can measure and use in your in the carbon tracker. On each of the sections, on each of the pages, to help you with some of your questions or queries, there is a frequently asked questions link. This is a live link, which if you click, you will get information around how it has been, how the information has been gathered, and it will really help you to answer some of your queries if you straight off want to refer them. Taking it very quickly, I know we are a little bit ahead of the time, but I would now like to show you how the results really look like. So this is the outcome dashboard, where you can see the dashboard will look like, explaining the summary of your total business carbon footprint. And on the right hand side, you can see how it has been built up, breaking it down to the 4 sections itself. And the cost element is also there, which is quite impactful. The results will also, the dashboard will also explain you the breakdown to each of those 4 areas: energy, transport, water, and export, energy export. Breaks it down to the core element of data entered against each of those categories. So that's quite useful. I can't show it here, but once you are in the carbon tracker, it is quite live. The results are quite live, and you can easily share it with your team. You can even present it in your management meetings if you are going through with your carbon reporting within the stakeholders. As Faith already explained about the carbon intensity ratios, these are quite useful. Government encourages organizations to take it in their reporting aspect. Gives you carbon footprint, tons of carbon footprint per employee, per output of your turnover, and also per square meters of your floor area. It is very useful not only for benchmarking, but also to make your decisions whether you are expanding your company within all of these aspects. Taking you through with the interactive net zero targeting tool. So this is a quite interactive tool where you can set yourself some generic scenarios on how you could achieve a net zero or decarbonization within next 10, 20 or 30 years. So you can set yourself a target year, or you can set yourself a percentage reduction, annual reduction on this baseline time functionality, and you can then understand how much of a unit reduction within an annual year leads you to X number of tons of carbon equivalent, and which will help you to achieve a scenario of net zero by 2030. So you can see here, if I select 21% reduction rate per year, it will be around 237 tons every year, and it will achieve me a net zero by 2030. So yeah, if I may again request Chris to launch the third poll for the delegates, and again you will have 30 seconds to respond, please.
There we go.
Thanks, Chris. think the results must be appearing now, Christina, isn't it? Brilliant.
Oh.
Do we have the results, Dan? I can't see anything.
Christina, you're on
Yes.
mute.
Sorry,
Yeah, it's
my
there,
fault.
it's there.
Sorry, the common problem of leaving yourself on mute. Sorry, Dewey, the answer to the question there of will you now measure and report your business carbon footprint, we have an overwhelming 91% saying yes and just 9% saying no.
That's a really brilliant response from all the delegates, and I'm sure you must all be already on this journey. So that's a great feedback. Thanks very much for all of you. And lastly, within this output, you not only be able to measure your carbon footprint under those 4 sections, but you will also be able to set yourself a target through the net zero tool. But then at the end, we encourage most of the businesses to commit themselves and make a pledge. So we are working very closely with the Department of EK base and their SME Climate Hub pledge, and that's where we have utilized that pledge and recommending to most of the businesses to come and make the pledge. If now I may introduce you to Diane Newgill, Climate Change Officer at Staffordshire County Council, to help us go through with the county's carbon ideas or carbon reduction strategies. Diane, you there?
Yep, thanks, Joey. Yeah, I see there's lots of interesting questions coming up about the carbon tool tracker. So I'll just give you a really quick overview of where we're at with the council. So climate change isn't anything new for the council. We have been tracking what we've been doing for over a decade now. We've had strategies in place, but unfortunately it wasn't really considered a priority for the council. It wasn't getting the funding it needed until Climate Change Act came in 2018, and we declared a climate change emergency in July 2019. And with that, we said that we were going to aim to get to net zero by 2050 for all the emissions from sort of our operations. And with that, there's been a real sort of push now for us to start doing sort of making changes and not just sort of doing small things around the edges. So we've been really quite busy over the last 2 years. Can you show the next slide, please? I know that all of you on the call here know what climate change is. I mean, it's not just melting ice caps and islands in the Pacific disappearing. It's something that happens everywhere in Staffordshire. Our weather patterns are changing. This is a picture in Stafford. And just to give you an example, between 2000 and 2020, they recorded 20 major flood events. But 9 of these, so almost 50% of them, have occurred in the last 2 years. So that's showing that, the change is happening, and it's it seems to be getting worse quickly, and it's cost us last year in 2020 flooding cost us £8 million, and so it's a huge investment that we have to make. Our flood team are working really hard. We're moving away now from the hard engineering structures that we used to put in for flooding, and we're looking at more sort of soft engineering works, which is obviously better for the biodiversity, but also it's more effective in slowing down the flooding. Next slide, please. So as I say, we've been measuring our emissions for many, many years. But we actually re-baselined in 2018. Unlike businesses, we have no statutory duty to report, and a lot of the guidance we have is under sort of interpretation, and you find that a lot of councils report in many different ways. So in 2018, we had a sort of look at what we were reporting against, and we decided to bring in quite a few more additional things, so it was giving a more complete picture. Two of the major ones that we brought in was waste management and home to school transport, which we weren't including before, and as you can see, they are the two major emitters that we're now having to tackle. So 2018, when we rebaselined, we had 50,000, just over 50,000 tonnes of carbon. And then when we reviewed it again last year, that had reduced down to 36,000. That sounds like a really good achievement, which it is. But as you can see, the major drops are around electricity, and that's because we changed onto a renewable energy supplier. So although that is having a really good impact on our carbon emissions, we also realise that we do have a commitment to reducing our electricity use. So in the background, we are still working on reducing the energy use of our corporate buildings and schools. But it was a slight achievement that you can see all of them have slightly dropped down. Between the only one that had a slight increase in emissions was highways. Don't know what the reason for that one was, but the highways are doing a lot. They have actually a commitment to get to net zero, I think, by 2030. So they're doing a lot of work. So next slide, please. So following our in 2019, when we declared our climate change emergency, we put a strategic development framework in place, which is a very high-level document which sort of outlines broadly our approach to how we're going to try and get to net zero by 2050. And at the time, we also put together a one-year action plan, which is now expired and now has just been replaced by this action plan, which is a 5-year action plan to 2025, which will be reviewed each year. Both of these documents are available on our website if anyone's interested to see what the details of them are in that. One of the key things, I guess, in our strategic development framework, which might be of interest to businesses, although we obviously recognise that we've got our emissions and our priority is to reduce that, we also talk about in the strategic framework about our spheres of influence and how, you know, we are part of Staffordshire. The County Council's emissions is only about 1% of the total emissions that Staffordshire County Council does, and so we also see the importance of working with others, with businesses and all our other partners, and that's something that we're working on next year, is how we can work together to reduce the footprint of Staffordshire as a whole. Next slide, please, Jay. So these are our what we call our 5 key themes. So when we looked at our emissions, we looked at where our biggest emissions were and where our priorities should lie, and we've come up with the 5 core themes. Waste being one of them. Waste is a really tricky area for us. Staffordshire Council being a waste disposal authority, we're responsible for the disposal side of the waste. So our emissions are based on all of the operations from the 14 recycling centres that we operate, and also all of the emissions from the 2 incinerators that we operate and the haulage to that. The main challenge on waste is obviously to reduce waste. Ideally, if people stopped producing waste, we would have no emissions, but that's obviously reliant on our residents, which is pretty much beyond our control. So we're doing a lot of work on thinking about how we can get our residents to recycle more and basically stop producing as much waste. Big challenge ahead. Air quality is one of our other priorities. Does cross over into a lot of different areas, but it is looking at things like we're putting into contracts for more efficient vehicles that have got to be put in, those that have lower emissions. Organisational carbon reduction, again, that's another big one for us. So that's all our corporate buildings that we have and all of the maintained schools. We don't record the emissions for all the ones that have converted to academies, which is another one reason why we rebaseline in 2018, because if you went back looking at our emissions right from the start, it looked like we'd had a huge achievement in our carbon reduction, but it was actually because a lot of our maintained schools had converted to academies, so we're no longer counting those. Natural environment, there's two ways of looking at this. We're looking at it, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of flood protection, sort of the adaptation side of it, but we're also looking at all the land that we own and looking at how we can use this better, looking, well, for example, where we might be able to plant more trees. That's an ongoing project at the moment. And then finally, behavioural change. Behavioural change cuts across all these four themes, but for it to work, we have to reach out and change people's behaviours. There's a team of, well, 2 of us in the council. Obviously, we can't do this alone, so we have to reach out to other people, and it's all about encouraging and getting other people to change. So we're having quite a lot of communications pushes, both internally and externally. So the next and final, next slide. So just a couple of examples, a few examples that we have done in the last couple of years. We've been investing quite a lot in schools to make them more efficient. So that's more efficient lighting. We've been upgrading boilers, putting more insulation in. A couple of schools have now got biomass boilers. Then with air quality in terms of outside schools, there's an air aware programme each year, which is trying to cut idling outside schools, and this has had a really good impact. The amount of emissions that's reduced, and also that we run a bikeability scheme, so that's encouraging people to use bikes safely and more efficiently, and to try and get people out of the cars, especially when driving just short journeys, school run and things like that. Last year, we operated a climate change action fund, which was operated through our members. £79,000 was issued to small community groups, schools, parish councils, and that was just for small scale projects. It was things like tree planting, a lot of, again, changes to LED lighting, increasing insulation, and it's a project, again, that we're hoping to launch again in November. So if any of you work on school boards, parish councils or local community groups, just keep your eyes out for this. It should be hopefully launching again at the start of November. Then there was the Warmer Homes scheme, which is run across all of the council areas, where energy efficiency programs can be put in. So that's, again, increasing insulation in people's homes and the heating systems. And there is a criteria for that, and that you have to have an income, I think, of less than 30,000 per household, and your house has to be energy efficient of E or lower. But again, that's been a really good scheme for improving those poorly insulated homes. And just that last one there, obviously, we have been working with SBEN, working with businesses. And then just the final slide is just, as I mentioned, the behavioural change thing. We have been putting quite a lot of effort into our communications. We do have a website. If you just Google "doing our bit to make Staffordshire sustainable," we have a landing page which has lots of hints and tips on climate change stuff. There's a Facebook page if anybody wants to follow on that, and you can also register for daily hints and tips direct to your email box by registering. There's a link on that, but if anybody wants any of those links, I can send those all to people afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Diane. Thank you very much for taking us through with some of the fantastic efforts Staffordshire County Council is putting in, not only to reduce their own carbon footprint, but also sending a strong message within the communities and the business community to and help them and encourage them, to reduce their carbon emissions. And yes, we've been working together, thanks to the funding. Carbon Tracker has been in reality now available for the businesses to go ahead with. I will now take you through with a very quick sharing on the business feedback before we actually launch the Carbon Tracker this month through our website. We did a user testing and trial session for some of the interested businesses who wanted to have a go and were available with their data to have a go. So we had around 4 and 5 of the businesses to complete the tracker and help us test the tool itself and find out the gaps and improvise it in a short span of time for a month. Mantech Technical Ceramics and Mark Beresford, he and his team worked very closely with us to get himself completed the carbon tracker, and you can see that they were able to identify their carbon footprint there. That was an eye-opener to them with what they achieved. Also, they are working closely with us on our energy efficiency funding program to implement recommendations to reduce that carbon footprint. Theo from Cozy Direct Sustainability Manager is already on with us on the launch event. Thanks to you. They completed the carbon tracker very recently, and they were able to identify their carbon emissions, and they are taking the right actions now to reduce the carbon footprint from Cozy Direct. So a brilliant example from the business itself. Finally, I'm so glad that there are proactive organizations within the Staffordshire business community. Here's a glimpse of a few of the organizations who have pledged, who have made a public pledge towards SME Climate Hub to achieve a net zero. Some of the examples are here, and it's a great achievement for these organizations committing themselves to make tangible a difference towards their carbon commitment. And there we achieve for our final poll question. Chris, if you could please launch the final question for all our delegates. Responses only for 30 seconds, please.
Right, there we are.
Thanks, Chris.
What more would you like to add to the carbon tracker?
So just to reiterate to you, as Faith suggested, that we had a very short span of time of around 3 months to develop the tool from scratch, depending upon the feedback from the businesses. Yes, the journey doesn't end here. It is evolving, and we will be working to add further additionalities to the tool in the next version, hopefully coming up in the next year. So waste is something we are already working on. There are ideas around carbon offsetting, but there is something more always to identifying carbon emissions. If you have any ideas, most welcome here. We will certainly be in touch, to understand if it can be added to the carbon tracker in the future.
There's some fantastic suggestions in the chat as well, so I hope we can record the chat
Yes,
and hang on to it for ideas for the next iteration of the tool.
Yeah, we're recording the chat, Faith.
Brilliant
as well.
There's also the opportunity in the feedback form, which will be sent out towards the end of this meeting, to actually, if you have any suggestions for other options as well.
Brilliant. Are we arriving with the results then, Christina?
We are, Dewey. I've remembered to take myself off mute. To the question, what more would you like to add to the carbon tracker? Waste, we have 29%. Carbon offsetting, we have 6%. So, and both we have 66%.
Brilliant. That's great. So it looks like, you know, most of the delegates are interested in both. It looks like we have more options, as you said, Faith, to look into. And
yeah, I'm really keen to get refrigerants and CFCs in it for next time.
Absolutely. So forgot to tell you, yes, as you said, rightly said, refrigerants is also an additionality which we will be adding it up very soon onto the carbon tracker. So yeah, thank you very much, all of you. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I hand it over now to Nicola.
Sorry, Julie, we've got a few questions. The Q&A session. I've been keeping an eye on the chat. Do apologise. I have put a few messages to say that we would actually catch up with answering your questions, but I don't know what's wrong at my end. Do apologise. So we've had. I'll just pick out a few questions if that's okay. We got time for this, Dewey?
Can I take off the presentation slides from here so that I can see?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I hope everybody's all right with this. Yeah, brilliant. That's great.
Okay, so we've got a really good question here from Zoe at Cycle of Good. She's asking about sea freights and air freight shipments to and from Malawi, and will the tool be able to help calculate this, is the question.
It doesn't presently. We were going to put ship in, weren't we, but it didn't make the final cut. So that's a really wonderful suggestion, Zoe. Can I ask you? You must be a Staffordshire-based business to be. So I think it's important that we respond to the needs of the members, really. So we'll try and take a look at that for next time.
So you know what we do, Faith? We're a charity and we recycle inner tubes and send them over to Malawi, and they get made into bags and belts and.
Oh yeah, I can picture your product. Yeah.
Yeah, so well, we're doing a great thing by saving these products from landfill, and okay, we're putting them on containers which are filled with other donations. So the container going to Malawi doesn't really shock me, because we're doing that anyway. We're sending school equipment, bikes, sewing machines over to Africa, but then we have to bring this stuff back. Now we either do it by air freight, or which is the biggest thing I don't like doing because it's a big spend for the charity, or we then put it on containers coming back. And we get asked a lot by people saying, okay, you're saving these from landfill and you're doing a great thing there, but you're also, what you're doing to the environment by sending containers and air freights around the world. So for us, I can justify the export. I can't justify the import at the moment. And I'd like to be able to give people who ask the question some hard evidence that actually this is what we're doing and this is the impact.
Yeah. We'll look at incorporating those things into the tool, but I would suggest that if actually, you know, there's always a balance between keeping it simple and making sure we meet everyone's needs. But certainly I think the UK carbon factors that are published each year will be able to shed light on that. So if you don't get the result you want from our tool, I think it'd be worth getting support through SBEN to get that calculation done for you, because I think it'd be reasonably straightforward to do.
I think so. Yeah. That's the right answer, Faith. Zoe, I would suggest, you know, at present, Carbon Tracker will not be able to, unfortunately, do that. But yes, we will be looking into shipping, you know, as Faith said, in our next extension over the year. But yes, certainly we will be, personally, I will be really happy to help you out with the right conversion factors to look into it, and maybe framing out a basic conversion for you to use it reiteratively, you know, for mapping that carbon footprint. And that, you know.
And another practical solution I might quickly suggest, though, is that there are other companies that ship back from Malawi who share shipments.
Yeah, we do that combined. So we don't do containers all the time. So we've just had 4 crates arrive in with all the goods for Christmas. So we've done a combined cargo ship that takes about 5 months. So we don't mind how long it takes, because we want to do it the most cost effective and better for the planet, really. It's air freights I don't want to do, obviously, because they are even worse than the sea freight. So yeah, I just would like something to show our supporters, because people buy from us because we're ethical, recyclable, you know, the vegan, all that kind of thing. So yeah, all you guys can buy for Christmas on our website. Sorry, got to get that bit in.
Okay. We've got another question here from Sophie Massey. Would we be able to get an outcome of amount of carbon per metre square produced?
That would be metre squared of product, would it?
I've just got here produced. Is Sophie here?
Yeah, we're a tile manufacturer, Johnson Tiles.
Tiles, right?
So,
okay.
we would like to express our carbon footprint as carbon per metre squared produced, because that's what a lot of our competitors like in Spain and Italy do.
Yeah, I would have thought so, yes. I think that's worth, particularly since it's a Staffordshire based tool. I think we just put basic carbon intensity ratios in for now. I'd like to see it have things like covers for restaurants and bed nights for holiday accommodation, and if the specific ceramic based ones, I think we should try and include them.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you.
We did discuss that earlier, isn't it, Faith, that the output units are something which we need to consider for the future in terms of the carbon intensity ratios. So yeah, I think that's a relevant additionality.
I think it'd be worth looking at the main sectors in Staffordshire and trying to get sector specific carbon intensity ratios for them. So that's a really good suggestion, Sophie.
Yeah, take it on board.
Okay, and we've got one final question here from Julie Simmons. Would it be possible for employee travel to and from work to be grouped together and just estimated in the tool? Excuse me.
It currently does that, yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Yeah,
Okay,
it currently does
okay.
that. There's an, I suppose we didn't do that in the quick rattle through, but there's 3 sections to transport. There's the fleet, which is owned vehicles. There's the grey fleet, which is staff vehicles and public transport, and that includes flights too, and train and so on. But there's an optional section that's for staff commute, and for all of those, you can either be specific or you can aggregate it. And with staff commute, you would definitely want to aggregate.
Absolutely, yes, that's right. Yeah, with the time constraints, we can't cover each and every template within the carbon tracker. So yes, all those 3 options, as Faith said, they're rightly there. So I hope it will be really helpful for you. But if you have any questions, we are available after this launch event, to help you with any of your queries. Yeah.
I know, Dewey, quickly before we do finish, I know Eddie asked a question about it being able to update the carbon tracker, the information, and I said you would likely to be covering that towards the end.
Is Eddie's question specifically about updating it monthly?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's designed to be an annual tool rather than a monthly tool. I don't think we'll be changing it to a monthly tool, will we? I think there's probably other far more expensive and fancy tools that do things like that, but this one's designed to be year on year.
Yeah, it really depended upon the feedback from the businesses itself, because most of the reporting, the standard reporting, has been required by UK government guidelines. It suggests, and a worth of a year reporting period to be considered. Yes, if you have your customized requirements for a monthly kind of a reporting iteration, that as Faith said, this is something which a consultant would be able to do it for you. Rather than a free tool like that. So,
I'm wondering though, Dewey, whether or not actually you could use it, because you just put your reporting period as the month and you would just produce one every month. It would be a bit manual, but it probably could do it.
It could do it, but it will be very manual. I'm not sure how you will be combining the results out from it, because that could be really a hectic and hefty task. It could do it, but yeah. It depends upon what kind of
it's not designed for it, is it?
You want to achieve. Yeah, not really for that minute level of data, perhaps. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Excellent. Thank you everybody so much for your time today. Thank you to the speakers, Dewey, Faith, Diane. Excellent, fantastic information. Judging by the engagement through the chat, you've really given people something to think about, which is just fabulous. Thank you to everyone who attended. It's really great to see so much interest in this carbon tracker tool. I'm sorry we've run out of time. The team will be hanging around for another 15 minutes. So anybody who wants to carry on the conversation or has a question, please do hang around for another 15 minutes. If not, the team will get back to you. Anyone who's put a question or a comment or a query in the chat, you will be contacted. So thank you very much. Those of you, I know everybody's busy, so those of you got other things to go to, really nice to see you all here today. Thank you very much for attending. And don't forget, SBEN have lots of really great events like this all the time. Look at their website for more information. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would just mention that I've just put in the chat window a link to the feedback form, which we'd be obviously grateful if you could fill in to give us, and there's your opportunity as well for any further comments and suggestions you might like to make in terms of what the tool should be covering in the future.
Yeah, that'll be really great.
And the recording will be stopping, I would imagine, shortly.
Yeah. If there are any personal, I'm just going through with the questions, you know, if I can take some of them, if possible.